Why do car auctions matter so much? And should you consider selling or buying with them? This is what we're going to discuss in that video, and I will also give you 10 facts that you may not know about car auctions. So stick around until the end of the video because you may learn a thing or two. To give a precision, I will be talking today about traditional auctions like sothebys, bonhams, goodings, Mecum, Barrett Jackson, not the online auction platform. That may be subject of another video, but let me know in the comments if you would be interested with me talking about Bring a Trader, Cars and Beads, all of those platforms that popped up these past few years and that are kind of disrupting the market. So let's get to it. Why do car auctions matter so much? Well, just like for any collectible market, whether it's art, furniture, sculptures, auctions usually represent the pulse of the market. Auctions give the rawest and purest market indicators, where lots are being offered at a given time with no other negotiation possible than putting the highest bid to win the lot. This way, auctions will allow us to track the market evolution on certain segments, on certain models, certain brands, but also it can give us a great overview of the car market health in general. While simple price evolution for a dedicated model may be interesting data, I think the most important data that we can get from auctions is what we call the sell-through rate. Simply put, the sell-through rate is the percentage of lots sold at a specific sale. For example, if we say that an auction has an 80% sell-through rate, it means that 80% of the lots were sold and 20% were not sold. While this can give us just a good perspective on one auction house performance at that specific sale, the most striking is when you make an average sell-through rate between all of the auction houses present at a specific car event or car week. When we talk about Pebble Beach, where we're going to have Goodings, Bonhams, Broad Arrow, sothebys, Mecum, all of those auction houses, at the end of the week, when you take the sell-through rate, you're going to have a number that will kind of give you how the market is acting at the moment. And so those weeks kind of act as a health checkup of the automotive market. Obviously, the lower the sell-through rate, the more defensive the market is. And the higher the sell-through rate, the more buyers are on the market, and so the healthier the market is. So even without being an active participant to those auctions, if you are just a car enthusiast, I highly suggest you to follow those auctions. You will learn about cars that you may have never heard about before, and if you have the chance to go physically to those auctions, you will be able to experience them from very, very close. And those cars can usually be just cars you see in museums. So you can take it as kind of like a super high-end car meet. And really, I insist, if you have the chance to go there, you should absolutely do it. Plus, usually it's in very nice locations, it's in nice venues, so you have a great experience all around. If you cannot go there, you should know that every auction house usually broadcasts their auction live on their website or on YouTube. So it will allow you to maybe follow them even if you're just on your couch. And next to that, usually auction houses release their auction catalog about 3 weeks to a month before the sale. So this can allow you to go through it, look at the most expensive lots, look at the cars that you may be interested in, and this will give you some time to research them and maybe work on them a little bit. So let's say you have a car or you want to buy one. Should you sell or buy through an auction house? Well, obviously, there could be many factors that could go towards a yes or a no. I think the most important one is that whether you're a seller or a buyer, you should not forget that auctions are kind of a game. And if you're someone who likes to play, if you are someone who likes taking risks, then you should probably consider it. You need to be willing to play the game. And playing the game means that sometimes you will be losing. And if you're not open to that, this may not be the right experience for you. Now, if there is one component, if there has to be just one component you should be really familiar with when it comes to auction, is the term of reserve price. The reserve price, simply put, is the number below which a car would not be selling. So if a car has a reserve price of $100,000, it's not going to be selling for less than $100,000. It's pretty straightforward. On the other end, some cars, some vehicles will be offered without reserve. And here you guessed it, it means that there is no minimum price on that specific lot. The car is just going to sell for the highest bid. Reserve prices are confidential. They are part of the agreement that is made between the auction house and the seller of the car. But when a lot is offered without reserve, it is always announced in the lot, in the catalog, and by the auctioneer himself. So obviously, as a seller, your ultimate goal is to sell your vehicle at the highest price possible. And to do that, you need to have as many bidders as possible on your car. Usually, that will mean allowing for a reserve price that will be below the regular market value of your vehicle, or even accepting to offer it without reserve. While this is taking a big risk, you also need to see that if you have a car that appears to be a good deal in the eyes of a buyer, you will attract that buyer in some ways to get interested in your car and probably later on bid on it. And if you do that on 10 or 15 people, at the end of the day and the day of the auction, you will have 15 people bidding on your car. And this will allow your car to maybe reach a higher selling price than you would have ever imagined. On the contrary, if you have too high expectations about your car, not only the auction house may just turn you off and tell you that they cannot work with that kind of value, but also none of the buyers will be interested in your car because they will just think it's going to get too expensive when you add the buyer's premium, the transport, and all of that. So again, if you are willing to sell your car at auction, you have to be ready to offer it at some very defensive numbers. If not, you just risk losing your time, losing some money, and hurting the value of your car because it's not going to sell. It is kind of rolling the dice, but if you decide to do it, you should commit all the way. Yes, you're going to risk maybe selling the car 20% below what you wanted, but you may also sell it 20% above. This is a game. This is part of the rules. You need to accept them and commit to them if you are willing to do so. Now, on the buyer side, what is true for sellers is true for buyers. This is a game and you need to understand all the rules that go with it. If you are really interested in a car because it's without reserve or because it seems like it has some pretty low estimate, you should know that there's going to be other people on it, for sure. You cannot be the only one interested in that specific car if it appears to be a good deal. So at the end of the day, if you have to fight against 10 other bidders, you may end up spending more than what you would have wanted. You can see it a little bit as a casino. You go there thinking you're going to be spending $500, and actually you get excited, and at the end of the night, you spend $800. That's how it is. That's part of the fun, but you should know about that. Another thing you should keep in mind as a buyer, while you should absolutely do all the research necessary on the car you are interested in, you can never know for sure what's the mechanical condition of a car, unless it is very clear and very clearly stated in the description or in the conversation you will have with one of the auction specialists. You should know that you're kind of rolling the dice on this one. A lot of those cars are part of big collections where maybe those cars were not very frequently used, so you may end up buying something that will require a little bit of work to be roadworthy. And speaking about the description of the car, as a buyer, you should learn to read between the lines. Of course, an auction house should never misrepresent a car, but you need to understand that some things will not be said in the description, and you will have to dig the information yourself. If there is no mention about the mechanical condition of the car, ask a specialist about that specific vehicle, or maybe hire an expert to make a full inspection of the car. In any case, I strongly suggest you to ask for a full condition report of the car before bidding on it. This way, you will have one of the auction house specialists give you a final take on the car, on its appearance, on its paint, on its bodywork. And not only this is going to give you an in-depth vision about the car that doesn't appear in the description, but also if anything happens after the sale, during the transport or anything, this will be some very valuable information about the condition of the car. And if something has been omitted, let's say a big dent or something that's wrong with the car, you will be able to go back to the auction house and say that was not mentioned just before the sale, so there is a problem there. You should see it as some kind of a protection as much as it is a big source of information. So to summarize all of this, whether you're a buyer or a seller, you should always keep in mind that auctions are like a game. I always compare it to the casino. You can go there without knowing if you're going to win or lose. You mostly go there for the experience, and the only limits that exist are the limits that you're going to put to yourself. So let me give you about 10 facts that you may not know about auctions. First, regarding the estimates and the reserve price. As I said before, when a lot is offered without reserve, it's always going to be announced in the catalog or by the auctioneer. Reserve prices are confidential, but there is one thing you should know. It's that the reserve price is never going to be higher than the low estimate of a specific lot. For instance, if a lot is estimated between $100,000 and $150,000, the reserve price is going to be at $100,000 or below, but never above $100,000. Second point that is related to that first one, 90% of the time, the reserve price is at the low estimate. This is what you should have in mind when you're interested in a car. It happens that the reserve price can be a little lower and that it's a strategy made by the auction house to give a little margin between the reserve price and the low estimate, but 90% of the time, the reserve is going to be at the low estimate. Third point, as a buyer, you should prepare yourself to provide the auction house with bank statements, proof of funds, or proof of financing at the time of registration. You should understand that the auction house cannot take the risk of letting someone register to the sale without making sure that they can afford what they are interested in. Fourth point, and this one is very, very important. As a buyer, you need to pay sales tax on the car that you purchase. Auction house at the sales act as dealers, and as such, they need to charge the sales tax on the invoice. I have seen countless times buyers getting into disputes with auction houses saying that it was illegal and all of that. This is perfectly legal and they have to do it. So you should factor in that sales tax in your total budget when you want to purchase a specific vehicle. The tax rate varies following where you live and all of that. So if you want to make sure about it, just ask beforehand to the auction house to give you your tax rate. Fifth point, this one is extremely important if you're a seller. You need to be ready to give the original of the title in your name to the auction house at the time of consignment. Again, the auction house acts as a dealer and they need to be in possession of the original of the title at the moment of the sale. They cannot take the risk to consign a vehicle and sell it without having the original title. Not only this is illegal, but also it happened in the past that some sellers changed their mind after the sale and refused to give the original title. So if you decide to go with an auction house, you need to provide them with the original title. 6 points. If you're a seller and you want to sell your vehicle at the very prime, like Amelia Island, Pebble Beach, all of those places, if your car is valued at $150,000 or below, you should be ready to offer it without reserve. Those locations are the primest locations for auctions, and auction houses have to make sure that lower value vehicles sell regardless. Again, as said before, offering your car no reserve at those locations will also bring you the biggest number of bidders. So you should be ready for that. 7th point, on the car without reserve. It is understood that the car is going to sell for whatever price. Well, actually, not really. The auctioneer will be able to protect a vehicle that is offered without reserve if there is no substantial offer on it. Usually, you can consider that an auctioneer is not going to sell a vehicle if the offer is maybe 40% of the low estimate. In other words, we all think that without reserve means that we can buy a car that is worth $100,000 for $5,000. But at the end of the day, the auctioneer is probably going to protect the value of the vehicle and protect the seller and its assets. Next point, if you are a seller and you have a reserve on your vehicle, you should be ready to lower that reserve the day of the sale. I would say 50% of the time, you will need to cut a deal at the moment of the sale. This is going to be the moment that your baby goes on stage to be auctioned, and you may need to agree to lose, I don't know, like $5,000, $6,000 on what you wanted, just to make sure that the car sells and that you don't have to take care of it anymore. Not to say that you will be doing it, but you should keep in mind that the auction house will probably ask you to do so. Ninth point, as a seller, be defensive on your numbers. Be ready to go without reserve and shop around. Ask many different auction houses what terms they can give you. At the end of the day, if you decide to send your car to Amelia Island or Pebble Beach, whether it's Bonhams, Sotheby's, Goodings, all of those auction houses are going to attract the same kind of clients. So if one auction house gives you a better deal than the other, you may need to consider it. If you have a car that is interesting enough, that can weigh in the balance. You can sometimes negotiate on the entry fee, you can negotiate on the seller's commission, you can negotiate on the transport. There are many things you can negotiate on, but the one condition is that you are defensive on your numbers. And the last point, which is probably one of the most important, because for anyone that is not very familiar for auction, this is not always something that is easy to spot. Knowing how to know if a car was sold or not. Whether a car sells or not, the auctioneer is always going to be dropping the hammer. If we are not familiar with auctions, we can think that dropping the hammer means that the car sold. Actually not. You need to listen to the auctioneer at the same moment as he drops the hammer. If the car sells, he's going to say sold. If it doesn't sell, he's just going to drop the hammer and maybe say something like pass, or we will come back on that later, or something like that. So you need to listen clearly at what the auctioneer says to make sure that the car sells or not. Anyways, that's about it. That's all I wanted to tell you. Don't hesitate to go see my other videos about buying a car for pleasure, about buying a collectible vehicle. These can be some interesting resources for you. Also, if you are interested in auctions, as you may know, I used to be a specialist at high-end auction houses, so I can answer a lot of questions that you may have. I can also make other videos about it. Just let me know in the comments if it's a subject that you are interested in. And yeah, don't hesitate to subscribe as well. And I will see you on the next one. Bye.